At a time when American women were still tightly laced into corsets and swathed in skirts from neck to ankle, Tillie Anderson had a different sense of style. At a time when physical exertion was still, by and large, considered unladylike, Tillie was one of the fittest, fastest athletes in the world.
She ruled racing in America and on a world stage for that brief window of time when women were, I suppose you could say, allowed to race before men said, you can't do this anymore, it's too dangerous.
Bicycle racing was the NASCAR of Tillie's day, with crowds of up to 20,000 coming out to watch as the riders flew around saucer-shaped wooden tracks known as velodromes. It was before the automobile, and the cyclists were the fastest thing the audience had ever seen.
In America, you see reports of 20,000 spectators watching women race around and around on a track. It was, I think, one of the early mass spectator sports in our sporting history.
Though it was always a male-dominated sport, there was a 7-year window where women participated in unsanctioned races, and Tillie dominated those years. She defied convention, defied her family, and at times it seemed defied gravity, pedaling through a most extraordinary life.
Well, Murmur, of course, did not like to see her daughter out there in pants, because in those days, women did not have legs. They just had feet down below these long skirts. And to make it even worse, one time, Mr. Tillie allowed a newspaper to publish a full sheet size of her drawing of her leg. Horrors!
Few people now remember that Tillie Anderson was the undisputed champion lady cyclist of the world, America's first women's world champion in any sport. In her racing heyday in the late 1890s, the bicycle craze was hotter than Rubik's Cubes or hula hoops, but it was also a great equalizer between the sexes, helping to usher in an end of Victorian constraints for American women. The wheel, as it was called, provoked practical changes in clothing, expanded their range of independent motion, and gave women a newfound sense of confidence. In 1896, Susan B. Anthony declared, "Bicycling has done more to emancipate women than any one thing in the world."
The bicycle came along at an opportune moment to allow women not just to get out of the home, but to get well out of the home. So it began to put the lie, really, to many of the doctors' injunctions that any kind of competitive or over-vigorous activity was bad for women.
As a champion cyclist, Tillie enjoyed more freedom than most women of her day ever imagined. From 1895 to 1902, Tillie toured America's cycle racing circuit, besting champions that crossed the Atlantic from England, Germany, and France to become one of the most famous women in America. Tillie held records for practically every distance, entering 130 races over her career and winning all but 7 of them. Financially independent and celebrated in poems, songs, and on the pages of newspapers here and abroad, the Terrible Swede revolutionized views of what women could accomplish. As such, she was subject to the scorn and hectoring condemnation of irate men, church officials, and in many cases, less progressive women. Her talent was so inspiring that her husband, Philip Schoberg, gave up his own bicycle racing career to manage Tillie's. News accounts describe racegoers as initially shocked by the scandalous racing outfits the women wore. Tights, short pants, and a long-sleeve sweater. But they soon lost themselves in the drama and excitement of the race. Typically, the women would cycle for 2 hours each evening, 6 nights in a row, with a scorekeeper keeping track of their laps and final positions. There was a great deal of wagering, and huge crowds divided themselves into cheering sections for their favorite riders, as bands thumped out lively tunes. Newspapers played up the rivalries between the riders, and their lives were chronicled like modern-day movie stars. There was danger, leading to serious accidents, as the riders without helmets jockeyed for position at furious speeds on bikes without brakes. In 1902, after a young Minneapolis woman died from a racing injury, women's professional cycling was banned as too dangerous. Men's competitive cycling, with its higher speeds, was even more perilous, but it continued uninterrupted. Tillie Anderson and her sisters in racing have been, up to this point, lost to history. Some say they were forgotten in the car mania that soon after swept the country. For many, their next vehicle would have 4 wheels. Suffragettes viewed the auto's displacement of the bicycle as a step backward for women's rights. As in most cases, it moved them out of the driver's seat and relegated them, once again, to passenger status. But the wheels of women's empowerment were already set in motion. As Maria Ward, author of Bicycling for Ladies, put it, "Riding the wheel, our powers are revealed to us." In 1902, after just 5 years of marriage, Tillie's husband Phil died of tuberculosis. She never remarried and remained, by all accounts, fiercely independent. She was strong-willed to her end at the age of 90 in 1965. Thanks to the efforts of her grandniece, Alice Repke, and her husband, Terry Repke, Tillie has received some long-due recognition. Nominated by U.S. cycling champ John Howard, Tillie was inducted into the U.S. Cycling Hall of Fame in the year 2000. As an immigrant teenager, Tillie took up the wheel for fun, fresh air, and exercise. But the path she pedaled down would push to the limits her physical strength and inner will, even as she challenged widespread expectations for what women could accomplish.